Alright, so today we're going to take a look at rotations. We're going to talk about the general rules. During class, I did give out a piece of patty paper. However, on this recording, I'm just going to talk about the general rule for doing the rotation. Okay. Before we start, we need to review, of course, clockwise and counterclockwise. Right? If you're going around a clock, okay, or watching the hands on a clock, they go around in this direction, so to the right. Okay. If you're going counterclockwise, then you're going around the clock to the left, okay, around the picture. Right. The way that we name where we are on the picture whenever we're doing rotation is the graph is broken down into 4 sections. Okay. And we call these sections quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Okay, so whenever we're moving here, we can refer to where it will end up once we do the rotation. Alright, so looking at the very first graph here. Okay, the original picture, the pre-image, alright, that's how we refer to it. Pre-image is ABC, and the coordinates for those points, A is at -4, 3, B is at -1, 3, and C is at -1, 1. Okay, whenever we do the rotation here, they're wanting us to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. Alright, so I know that since I'm going counterclockwise, I'm going to be taking this picture and I'm going to be rotating it this direction. So spinning it this way. 90 degrees means I'm going to take this picture here and I'm going to move it into one quadrant. Okay, so from here I'm in the second quadrant. I'm going to move it down here to the third quadrant. Okay, anytime we do rotations about the origin, okay, we're going to move it one time, 90 degrees. The rule is that we switch the x and y's. Okay, so A prime now will switch just the numbers. Don't worry about the signs yet. Okay, so we're going to switch to 3, 4. All right, but to determine the signs of these points, we need to look at where we're moving it to. And that's where this is going to come in handy. Okay. When we're looking at a graph, this part of the x is the positive part. This part of the y is the positive part. This is the negative x, and this is the negative y. Okay, so on my graph, if I'm moving it 90 degrees counterclockwise, I'm going from here where y is positive, x is negative. Okay, and we can tell that by looking at our points here. The x was negative, the y's were positive. Okay, and I'm going to rotate it one time and bring it down here where my x is going to be negative and my y will be negative. Alright, so in this case I'm going to have a -3 and a -4. Okay, for B prime, I'm going to switch these. So it's going to be 3, 1, and then the x and the y both will be negative. Okay, and for the C's, again, I'm going to switch it, which 1, 1 will stay 1, 1, but they're both going to be negative. And now I can plot the points of my new graph here. Right, so I have A at -3, -4. B prime is at -3, -1. And C is at -1, -1. So this is the picture of my graph rotated 90 degrees counterclockwise. So I have taken this picture here and I have spun it about the origin and brought it to here. We are now going to take this picture here, my image, and we're going to rotate it again. So if my coordinates were originally -3, -4, -3, -1, and -1, -1, When I rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise about the origin, APO stands for about the origin, I'm going to take this picture here and I'm going to move it one quadrant. So I'm moving it from the third to the fourth. Okay. In the fourth quadrant, I know that my x values here are positive and my y values here are negative. So on all of these, I can go ahead and make all of my y's negatives. Okay, and I'm going to switch the x and y again. So if it was at 3, 4, it's now at 4, and it's going to be a negative 3. Okay, 3, 1 will be a 1 and then negative 3. And then 1, 1, of course, switches to 1, and I have negative 1. Okay, and I can graph these points. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And this will be A. And I use 2 apostrophes this time because I've moved the original figure 2 times. B is at 1, negative 3. And C is at 1, negative 1. Okay, what I want you to notice here, whenever I rotated it once, I switched the x and y. When I rotated it twice, okay, the points, the numbers did not change, but the signs did change. Okay, so whenever we do 2 rotations, which would be equal to 180 degrees, the signs will change, but the numbers will stay in the same place. If we rotate it once, 90 degrees, okay, they switch. All right, so looking at this next example here. I want to take this same figure that we were using on the previous page, and I want to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise about the origin. So that means I'm taking this picture from here. I'm going to move it one quadrant, and I want to put it clockwise, which means I'm going to move it to here. Because from here, clockwise would go this direction. All right. In this area here, I know that my x is positive and my y is positive as well. So I start with my original coordinates. A is at negative 4, 3. B is at negative 1, 3. And C is at negative 1, 1. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise. So I'm going to rotate it once. And I know that both x and y are going to be positives here. So I'm going to switch the numbers and keep them both positive. So A is at negative 4, 3. A prime will be at 3, 4. B is at negative 1, 3. B prime will be at 3, 1. And C is at negative 1, 1. It will end up at positive 1, 1. All right, so I can graph my shape. It's going to be A prime, B prime, and C prime. Okay, taking the image I just rotated, so A prime, B prime, C prime. I have those coordinates already. I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. When you rotate it 180 degrees, it's not going to tell you to go clockwise or counterclockwise because you're going to end up in the same place, no matter which way you go. So from here in quadrant 1, if I rotate it clockwise, 180 degrees, that's going to be 2 rotations. I end up in the third quadrant here. Or if I go counterclockwise, from here I go 1, 2 rotations. I end up in the same place. All right. In this area here, I know that my x is negative and my y is negative. Okay, so since I've gone 2 times, I keep my x and y the same as far as the numbers, but I change the sign. So it will be negative 3, negative 4. negative 3, negative 1, and negative 1, negative 1. Okay, again, x and y both are negative in this area here. So I'll plot my point. A double prime, B double prime, and C double prime. And there is my image rotated 180 degrees. Alright, so let's do some more practice of this. Okay, I'm going to rotate triangle RTS 90 degrees clockwise about the origin. Okay, so I'm going to write down the coordinates of my original picture. So R is at the point negative 5, 0. S is at the point negative 2, 3. And T is at the point 1, 0. I'm going 90 degrees clockwise. So that means I'm taking this picture and I'm moving it in this direction one time. Okay, in this area here, I know that X is positive and Y's are positive. Okay, so since I'm moving it once, R prime, I'm going to switch these, 0, 5, and I know that X and Y both are positive. S prime, I'm going to switch these. So 3, 2, and again, both are positive. And T prime. So 1, 0 would be 0, 1. And I can plot my new points. So 0, 5 is here. And this is R prime. 3, 2 is S prime. And 0, I'm so sorry, I have made an error. T, I apologize, T is at the point 0, 1. I don't move left or right, but I do move up. Okay, so T prime would be at 1, 0. And this here is my new state. Okay, for the next example here, okay, I'm going to take triangle KLM, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise about the origin. Okay, so I'm going to take each of the coordinates of these points, and then I'm going to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So from here, counterclockwise would mean I'd move it here, up into quadrant 1. And again, in quadrant 1, X is positive and Y is positive. Okay, so I'm going to write down K is at the point 5, negative 5. L is at the point 2, negative 1. And M is at the point 1, negative 2. So K prime, I'm going to switch my X and Y's, and both are going to be positive. So 5, 5. L prime would be at 1, 2. And M prime would be at 2, 1. And so I can plot my new point. K is at 5, 5. L is at 1, 2. And M is at 2, 1. And there is my new graph. Okay, so let's rotate this figure, WBX, 180 degrees about the origin. Okay, and again, if we go 180 degrees, it doesn't matter if I go clockwise or if I go counterclockwise. 180 degrees means I'm going to move it 2 times and I'm going to end up in the same place. So from here, if I go 1, 2, that's going to put me right here in the second quadrant. And I know in this area here, the X is negative and the Y is the positive. Okay, so I'm going to write down the coordinates for my original shape. So V is at the point 1, negative 3. W is at the point 5, 0. And X is at the point 5, negative 5. Okay, and I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to put it here in this area. I know that my X's are negative and my Y's are positive. So V prime, W prime, and X prime, I can go ahead and say that my X's are all negative. Okay, because I move it 2 times, 180 degrees, I'm not going to switch the numbers. Okay, but it's going to be a negative 1, and my Y's are positive, so a positive 3. Okay, I'm not going to switch them, so it's going to be a negative 5, 0, and a negative 5, 5. Okay, so I'm going to plot my point, negative 1, 3, negative 5, 0, and negative 5, 5. And there is the graph of my new shape. Looking at the last example on this page here, I see that I have part of the figure in the 3rd quadrant and part of the figure in the 4th quadrant. Okay, whenever I do the rotation 180 degrees, I'm going to move it twice. Okay. For this one, I know that X is positive here, Y is positive here, X is negative here. Okay, and we have to visualize where it is that we're moving this shape. Okay, how we're rotating it and where the points are going to end up. So I'm going to start by writing down the coordinates. So I have G, H, I, and J. G is at the point 3, negative 5. H is at the point 2, 0. I is at the point negative 1, negative 1. And J is at the point negative 1, negative 3. Okay, so again, we're visualizing where we're going to end up. So if I'm taking G from the 4th quadrant here, and I'm going to move it twice. So I'm going to move it here and then here. It's going to end up in the 2nd quadrant. X will be negative, Y will be positive. Okay, so I keep my numbers the same since I rotated twice. X is negative, Y is positive. Okay, H is here. I'm going to move it here and then here. And again, X is negative, Y is positive. So it'll be a negative 2, 0. Now then, I and J, they're in the 3rd quadrant. If I move them twice, I'm going to end up in the 1st quadrant, where both parts, X and Y, are positive. So I will be at the point positive 1, positive 1. And J will be at the point positive 1, positive 3. Okay, so I can plot my point. This is G prime, H prime, I prime, and J prime. All right, on the last page of the notes here, all we have to do is describe the rule for the transformation. Okay, so we're going from our pre-image to our image. Okay, and I've moved this 2 quadrants. So in other words, this is 180 degrees. And it doesn't matter, I don't have to say clockwise or counterclockwise, but I do need to say that this is about the origin. We can abbreviate that. All right, for the second graph here, I'm rotating the pre-image. Okay, and there's 2 different ways that I can say that I rotate this. I can say that I rotate clockwise 90 degrees. And I abbreviate clockwise CW. Or I could go counterclockwise. And if I go counterclockwise, then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 times, which is 270 degrees. Okay, so I could say rotate 270 degrees counterclockwise. Same general concept on the last two here. Okay, so going from the pre-image to the image, I can go 90 degrees counterclockwise. Or I can rotate it 270 degrees clockwise, going this direction. Okay, looking at the last one here, I start with my pre-image here. To get to my image, I rotate 90 degrees clockwise. Or again, 3 rotations, 270 degrees counterclockwise. And that is how we do rotations.